Commander Vex stared at the tactical display, his three eyes blinking in rapid succession. The holographic projections showed what could only be described as, well, absolute mayhem. 27 Krillian Shadowhounds, genetically modified apex predators from the death world of Krill Prime, were supposed to be hunting down a single human recruit during standard combat assessment protocols. Instead, 17 of them were dead. 5 were whimpering in corners. 3 had somehow gotten themselves tangled up in their own restraint cables. And two had apparently surrendered. Sir? Lieutenant Corb's voice cracked slightly. The human is requesting medical assistance for the wounded predators. Vex's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Medical assistance? For the Shadowhounds? Yes, sir. Apparently, she's concerned about their psychological trauma. The absurdity of the situation hit Vex like a plasma cannon to the thorax. Here they were, running the most brutal combat simulation in the known galaxy, using creatures that had terrorized entire star systems, and the human was worried about their feelings? Patch me through to the arena, Vex growled. The communication channel crackled to life, and immediately they could hear the human's voice. Not screaming in terror, mind you. Not begging for mercy. She was actually talking to the predators? Hey there, big guy. Yeah, you with the 3 heads. I know that tail whip looked impressive, but you telegraphed it from a parsec away. Here, let me show you how to improve your stance. Corb's antennae twitched nervously. Sir, is she giving combat advice to our test subjects? Through the arena's visual feed, they watched as Maya Torres, a relatively small human by galactic standards, crouched next to a massive shadowhound that was roughly the size of a hover transport. The creature's eyes, all 6 of them, were focused on her with what could only be described as rapt attention. You see, your species evolved for pack hunting, right? But you've been kept in isolation cells for cycles. That messes with your natural coordination patterns. No wonder you're having trouble working together. Vex felt a migraine developing behind his primary optical sensor. She's analyzing their behavioral psychology. During a death match. Apparently so, sir. The camera angle shifted, showing Maya standing up and brushing dust off her standard-issue combat suit. Not a scratch on her. Meanwhile, the arena floor was littered with unconscious predators, some of whom appeared to be sleeping peacefully. Command, this is Torres. Her voice came through the comm system with irritating cheerfulness. I've completed the assessment, but I need to file a formal complaint about the treatment of these animals. Vex's third eye began twitching. A complaint? Yes, sir. These creatures show clear signs of psychological distress from prolonged isolation. Their hunting instincts have been compromised by inadequate socialization protocols. Frankly, it's inhumane. Inhumane? Vex's voice echoed through the command center, causing several junior officers to duck behind their workstations. They're apex predators from a death world. They've killed more sentient beings than the plague of Andromeda. With respect, sir, that just makes proper psychological care even more important. A stressed predator is an inefficient predator. You're actually making them worse at their job. Lieutenant Corb cleared his throat delicately. Sir, she might have a point. The psychological evaluation protocols for combat creatures were designed by the Department of Xenobiology, and they're notoriously understaffed. Vex turned all 3 eyes on his subordinate. Are you seriously suggesting that a human recruit knows more about managing death world predators than our military xenobiologists? Before Corb could answer, Maya's voice crackled through the comm again. Also, I've taken the liberty of organizing them into proper pack formations. If you're going to use them for future training exercises, they'll be about 40% more effective now that they're properly socialized. On the tactical display, they could indeed see the surviving Shadowhounds had formed coordinated hunting groups. They moved with a fluid precision that hadn't been seen since their capture on Krill Prime. She organized them? Vex whispered. In under 30 minutes, Corb confirmed. Consulting his chronometer, through the feed, they watched Maya walking toward the arena exit, followed by what appeared to be a respectful escort of apex predators. Not hunting her. Not stalking her. Escorting her. Like some sort of bizarre honor guard. Oh, and command? Maya's voice had that particular tone that every military officer learned to dread. The tone that meant a subordinate was about to say something that would ruin your entire day. I'm going to need to speak with whoever designed these holding cells. We need to discuss environmental enrichment protocols, proper exercise schedules, and mental stimulation requirements. Vex stared at the display for a long moment. Then he turned to Corb. Get me a connection to High Command. And a very strong drink. What should I tell them, sir? Vex watched as Maya gave what appeared to be a gentle pat to a creature capable of tearing through battle armor with its claws, before disappearing through the arena exit. Tell them we might need to revise our definition of dangerous. 3 standard galactic hours later, Commander Vex found himself in the most surreal briefing of his 40-cycle military career. High Command had not only taken Maya Torres seriously, they had promoted her to Senior Xenobiological Combat Consultant. A position that, according to the hastily created job description, apparently didn't exist until 30 minutes ago. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral Throck's voice rumbled through the holocommunicator, his massive bulk filling most of the projection space. Not only did the human survive the Shadowhound trial, she reformed our entire predator management program? That's accurate, sir, Vex replied, wondering if early retirement was still an option. Maya Torres stood beside him, looking remarkably composed for someone who had just revolutionized military protocol by accident. With respect, Admiral, I prefer optimized. Your previous system was functional, just inefficient. Corb leaned over to whisper to Vex. She's been like this for 3 hours. The logistics department is crying. Indeed, Maya had spent the afternoon systematically dismantling decades of established procedure with terrifying efficiency. The Shadowhounds were now housed in pack-appropriate social groups with environmental enrichment activities. The Razorwing Falcons had been given flight time and puzzle feeders. Even the notorious Void Crawlers, creatures of pure nightmare from the dark side of Proxima, were apparently suffering from inadequate lighting conditions. Consultant Torres, Admiral Throck's voice carried a note of barely contained bewilderment. Your suggestions are unconventional. They're evidence-based, sir. I've been reviewing your xenobiology databases. Most of these creatures are being treated like weapons instead of living beings with complex psychological needs. Vex watched as his superior officer's face cycled through several shades of purple. They are weapons, Consultant. Extremely lethal ones. Exactly my point, Maya continued, apparently immune to the concept of military hierarchy. A stressed weapon malfunctions. A properly maintained weapon performs optimally. Your current system is like trying to fire a plasma rifle that's been sitting in a storage locker for 20 cycles without maintenance. The analogy hit home. Every military officer understood weapon maintenance. She's not wrong, rumbled General Krex, the Armory Division commander, his voice grudgingly admitting defeat. We've been losing combat effectiveness ratings across all biological assets for the past 5 cycles. Maya pulled up a holographic chart that made Vex's brain hurt just looking at it. Stress hormones in your predator species have increased by 300% since implementation of current containment protocols. Hunting accuracy is down 47%. Pack coordination has completely collapsed in social species. And your solution? Admiral Throck asked, though his tone suggested he already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. Comprehensive welfare reform. Social housing where appropriate. Environmental enrichment programs. Regular exercise schedules. Mental stimulation activities. Maya paused, then added with devastating casualness, also, I'd like to implement a buddy system. A what now? Vex felt that migraine returning. Buddy system. Pair each predator species with compatible handler species for emotional support and behavioral guidance. The silence that followed could have been measured in geological epochs. Finally, Corb raised a tentative appendage. Ma'am, are you suggesting we assign therapy animals to our combat animals? I'm suggesting we treat them like the complex, intelligent beings they are instead of mindless killing machines. Admiral Throck's image flickered as he processed this information. Consultant Torres, do you have any idea what you're proposing? These creatures have terrorized entire sectors. Yes, sir. And they'll be much better at it once they're psychologically healthy. The brutal logic was undeniable. A happy predator was an efficient predator. An efficient predator was a more terrifying predator. The preliminary results from today's resocialization are impressive, General Krex admitted reluctantly. Combat efficiency projections show marked improvement. Maya smiled, and somehow that expression was more terrifying than any Shadowhound. Wait until you see my proposal for the nightmare wasps from Sector 7. They've been exhibiting clear signs of depression. A few social interaction protocols and some cognitive behavioral therapy should have them back to peak traumatizing potential within a lunar cycle. Vex stared at the human who had just casually mentioned giving therapy to creatures that literally fed on fear and despair. Permission to speak freely, sir, he asked Admiral Throck. Granted. I think we're all doomed. Maya laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both cheerful and ominous. Commander, you're thinking about this all wrong. We're not doomed. We're just finally doing things right. Admiral Throck's projection leaned forward. Consultant Torres, I'm approving your reforms on a trial basis. But I want detailed reports on every single modification. Absolutely, sir. I'll also need a bigger budget for enrichment activities and therapy staff. As the connection ended, Vex turned to Maya with something approaching awe. You just convinced High Command to fund therapy for nightmare creatures from death worlds. Commander, Maya said, gathering her data tablets with professional efficiency, wait until they see my proposal for anger management classes for the rage beasts of Terminus Prime. Corb made a small choking sound. They have rage beasts? Not anymore, Maya replied with terrifying cheerfulness. Soon they'll have emotionally balanced and highly efficient combat assets. Vex looked around the command center, watching his staff process the reality of their new existence. Sir? Corb whispered. Should we be afraid? Vex watched Maya head toward the xenobiology labs, presumably to begin her campaign of compassionate optimization. Lieutenant, I think we just discovered that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And the scariest part? They do it by being nice.